Photographs. They have the power to challenge our beliefs, change our minds, touch our hearts. But to capture the world's greatest pictures, you need the world's greatest camera, the Nikon F5. Superior autofocus speed with exceptional accuracy. 3D multi-sensor balanced fill flash with advanced performance features. Custom functions for expanded control and operation. Metal construction throughout for legendary Nikon durability. A new level of comfort and handling performance. It's a Nikon F series camera. Imported from the future, the Nikon F5 provides the highest level of 35mm SLR performance. Your host for this edition of the Nikon School will be professional photographer Joe McNally. You've seen his work in National Geographic, Time, Sports Illustrated, Nikon World Portfolio, and hundreds of other publications. In 1995, Joe became the first Life magazine staff photographer in more than 20 years, following in the footsteps of the great Alfred Eisenstadt, Carl Meitens, and Gordon Parks. And while he has always depended upon his personal vision of photography, it's the right tools that help make it happen. Today, Joe is here to explain one of the most remarkable cameras ever, the Nikon F5.
Hello, I'm Joe McNally. The Nikon F5 is packed with all the advanced features professional photographers have asked for. But you don't need to learn everything about the F5 at once. Concentrate on individual features, and then later, you can learn how to use them together. A good approach is to review the controls on the F5 and think about the way you like to take pictures. Start by using the techniques you're most familiar with, and then begin experimenting with the F5's newest features. Explore, enjoy the process, and let it all happen easily and naturally. This is the same way we'll present the F5 today. Because you're a serious photographer and probably familiar with camera operation, we'll concentrate on the F5's new features. We'll also go on location with John H. White, Bill Frakes, Eddie Adams, Franz Lanting, and Pete Turner. Each of these world-famous photographers uses the F5, and in no time at all, you'll be using the F5 to make the kind of photographs you could only imagine before. If you're ready, let's get started. We'll begin by examining the F5's exterior controls. Then we'll look at the viewfinder and move on to the F5's major new features. In putting it all together, we'll show you how individual features can be combined for remarkable results. Throughout, we'll be hearing from our team of photographers, and finally, we'll review some important accessories and lens combinations. The F5 features Nikon's convenient command dial operation. To make almost any setting, you simply press the appropriate button and rotate the main command or sub-command dial. The main command dial sets primary functions such as exposure mode and shutter speed. The sub-command dial sets functions such as aperture and automatic and manual modes and number of frames. It also sets EV steps in auto bracketing and custom functions. All selections are confirmed in either the top or rear LCD panels. Major settings appear in the top panel, where both the settings and the actual size of the panel are larger for instant recognition. Both LCD displays can be illuminated by turning the power switch to the left, making them visible even in the dark. Illumination turns off automatically with the light meter to conserve battery power. Located on the front of the camera is the mirror lockup lever. This lever locks the reflex viewing mirror in the up position for those rare occasions when you want to totally eliminate mirror movement. When the mirror lockup lever is in the up position, the exposure meter will not function. In this situation, you must manually set shutter speed and aperture. Directly above the mirror lockup lever is the depth of field preview button. This feature operates in all shooting modes, including program and shutter priority, enabling you to verify the focusing zone of any composition. Opposite the depth of field preview button is the lens release button. Your F5 is compatible with all AF Nikkor lenses, including the new ultra-fast AFS silent wave lenses, and nearly every AF Nikkor lens. But remember, the F5 offers its highest level of performance with D-type AF Nikkor lenses. Performance will be limited to a smaller selection of features when older non-AF lenses are used. Directly below the lens release button is the focus mode selector. You can choose S, single servo AF, with focus priority where the camera will not fire unless the subject is in sharp focus, or C, continuous servo AF, with release priority where the camera fires regardless of focus status. The F5 separate sync terminal accepts all standard PC-type plug-in sync cords and Nikon screw-in type cords. Use this terminal to attach flash units which do not have standard ISO hot shoes. The F5 is compatible with every Nikon ISO type hot shoe mounted speed light. And when operating with the SB26 or the SB27, the F5 offers 3D multi-sensor balanced fill flash, the most advanced fill flash of any camera in the world. The F5 has two shutter release buttons, one for horizontal shooting and one for vertical shooting. Depressing either of these buttons engages autofocus. Autofocus can also be engaged by two separate autofocus start buttons, again one for horizontal shooting and one for vertical shooting, a feature that professional photographers have asked for. When using these buttons, autofocus through the shutter release buttons can be canceled by a custom setting. Located on the back of the camera is the focused area selector, which allows you to select among 5 focusing areas: left, right, top, bottom, and center. It also allows you to select among 5 spot metering areas when using the new electrochromic focusing screen. The AF area mode button lets you choose dynamic area autofocus or single area autofocus. Using dynamic autofocus, the 5 AF sensors are active, and through computer control, they can track the subject as it moves in the viewfinder area. Using single area autofocus, only one focus sensor operates at a time. You may randomly switch from one sensor to another. The self-timer provides a 10-second delay before the shutter is tripped. The delay can be changed from 2 to 60 seconds through the F5's custom setting menu. During self-timer operation, the eyepiece shutter allows you to cover the eyepiece. This way, extraneous light is prevented from entering through the eyepiece and adversely affecting the exposure. The 10-pin remote terminal connects you to a range of Nikon accessories. These include the personal computer connecting cord MC3334, remote cord MC20, or MC30, the Modulite remote control set, and an array of others. Opening the magnetic control panel door on the back of the F5 enables you to access even more controls. The film speed button allows you to manually set the ISO by rotating the main command dial. This is the flash sync mode button, which we'll cover in detail in a few moments. The shutter speed aperture focus lock button, and the custom setting menu button. Custom settings allow you to determine how you want your camera to operate. 24 custom settings are built into the camera. Another 17 are available when you use Nikon's exclusive Photo Secretary software together with your personal computer. This means you can set your camera according to your personal preferences or prepare it in advance for a specific shooting situation or assignment. If you have customized your F5 but would like to return to its original factory settings, simply push the bracket and custom setting mode buttons together for 2 seconds. This 2-button reset will return the camera to its original settings. There are 4 automatic film advance modes. To choose a mode, rotate the Film Advance Mode Self-Timer selector while pressing the Film Advance Mode selector lock release. Set S for single frame shooting, CL for continuous low-speed shooting, CH for continuous high-speed shooting, or CS for continuous silent low-speed shooting. Using 8 AA lithium batteries, the F5 can achieve a firing speed of 7.4 frames per second with focus tracking with lock-on. Film rewind takes about 6 seconds. The F5 also accepts a rechargeable nickel metal hydride battery unit, the MN30. This unit enables the F5's maximum firing speed of 8 frames per second and a film rewind time of 4 seconds. The MN30 recharges in about 100 minutes and can be recharged about 500 times. Having 2 MN30s on hand, one to use while the other is recharging, can keep you shooting without interruption.
Oh, nice!
You can check battery power at any time by simply pressing the shutter release. Sufficient battery power, batteries nearing exhaustion, and batteries exhausted. To open the camera back, slide the lock release to the right and lift the film rewind knob up until the back pops open. The F5 features automatic film loading and automatic and manual rewind. To rewind film automatically, open the film rewind panel, press the film rewind button, turn the film rewind lever while pressing the lock release. Film can also be rewound manually by pressing the film rewind button and turning the crank in the direction of the arrow. This method is ideal when complete silence or battery conservation is needed. Now let's look at the F5's viewfinder. The F5 comes with the DP30 multimeter viewfinder. This viewfinder's high eye point allows a full sharp view even when your eye is a significant distance from the finder. The DP30's built-in diopter adjustment offers a range of -3 to +1, ideal for both near and far-sighted photographers. The metering system selector is also located on the viewfinder. Select 3D color matrix, center weighted, or spot. The DP30's electrochromic viewfinder display is exceptionally sharp and clear. The display contains complete shooting information, meaning you never have to take your eye off the action. The standard screen provided with your camera, type ECB, shows the selected focus area and allows easy focus on its matte surfaces. Other screens are available as an aid to close-up work, architecture, astrophotography, moving subjects, and more. Replacement of the screens is easy, requiring only a simple pop-in, pop-out procedure. 3 optional viewfinders are available for the F5, each designed with different shooting situations in mind. The AE Action Finder DA30 is ideal when normal viewing is difficult or impossible, as when the F5 is mounted in an underwater housing. The 6X High Magnification Finder DW31 is outstanding for high magnification close-up work. The Waist Level Finder DW30 is for use when the camera must be positioned at a low angle or at waist level or working on a copy stand. Changing finders is also easy, requiring only a slide-out, slide-in procedure. Now that you're more acquainted with your camera, let's move on to its major new features. The F5 features the fastest and most accurate autofocus system ever. Working at up to 8 frames per second with focus tracking with lock-on, you'll get more original keeper shots and a tighter sequence of events than ever before possible. Even when other objects momentarily come between you and your subject, the camera will continue to concentrate on the original subject, and you can use autofocus with lock-on closer than ever before. For example, using a 300mm lens and the F5's focus tracking function, it's possible to focus on a subject moving at up to 200 miles an hour at a distance of 66 feet. The F5 incorporates Nikon's new Multicam 1300 autofocus sensor. The sensor is made up of 5 multiple focusing points which are arranged horizontally and vertically. Instead of just a simple line of sensors, the F5 sensors cover left, right, top, and bottom of the frame. This huge, wide cross array of full-time sensors operates within 44% of the viewfinder's horizontal coverage and 30% of its vertical coverage. In fact, the F5 provides a line of AF sensing even when the camera is held in the vertical position. A high-speed mirror with an exclusive mirror balancer, high-speed focus data computation, and high-speed lens drive help the F5's autofocus system excel under the most demanding conditions. Nikon's exclusive mirror balancer dampens mirror movement, so there's virtually no mirror bounce. This means razor-sharp images even at the F5's highest frame rate. Let's watch as Franz Lanting, famous wildlife photographer, puts the F5 to work.
That's gorgeous right here. Steve, if you could drop your gear and go, say, walk straight out, I want to get an idea of, say, how big that cheetah would look in the frame. See, this is beautiful. We get a beautifully blurred foreground and background when it runs through that corridor. Stretch your arms again. What we were doing here this morning was to try and track a cheetah running at full speed, coming straight at me, and to have it as a dynamic composition. Good run. And when I saw that the camera was able to hold focus and move focus from the beginning point of the run straight towards me and it was still in focus 36 frames later, I think I'm convinced. Best run. Best run. That's amazing. When we worked with the Tiger, I was shooting with a 600mm lens. And that meant that, say, my depth of field would be very limited and that the only thing that I could reasonably expect to be in focus, say, was the nose and the eyes of the animal. In this particular case, say, I chose a focal position that was on the top end of the frame, which allowed me to track the animal much closer than would have otherwise been possible until it was almost full frame. And I was still tack sharp on the nose and the eyes. We do a vertical sequence? Let's do it. Cool.
Remember that autofocus is activated whenever the camera is turned on and the shutter release is slightly depressed or the AF on button is fully depressed. Autofocus is also activated when the focus mode selector is set to S or C. S is for single servo AF with focus priority and is ideal for stationary subjects. C is for continuous servo AF with release priority, ideal for moving subjects. In either autofocus mode, and in any film advance mode, focus tracking activates automatically when the subject begins moving. The camera then analyzes the speed of the moving subject and obtains correct focus by anticipating the precise position of the subject at the exact moment of exposure. The F5's autofocus system operates with Nikon AF lenses 5.6 and faster, which is every autofocus Nikon lens. But there's more. The F5 also features dynamic autofocus. Dynamic autofocus allows you to shoot moving subjects without changing your composition. It also makes it easier to shoot any subject whose position at the time of exposure is difficult to predict. Here's how it works, and here's how it helps you make great pictures. To select dynamic autofocus, you must set either continuous autofocus or single servo autofocus on the front of the camera. Then press the AF area mode button and rotate the main command dial to the dynamic autofocus symbol. Now using the focus area selector on the back of the camera, select the primary sensor, the sensor that will be the first to detect the subject. You can choose any one of the 5 sensors to be the primary sensor, and you can change your choice at any time. This gives you all new freedom to compose and concentrate on the action. Dynamic autofocus is outstanding for sports photography as well as photojournalism. Here's a situation where I use dynamic autofocus myself. Well, somebody's got to come out there and meet me with some film. You're going to own it, right?
Shooting him coming off the rim. I want to see how many feet he goes this way. 45 feet.
The jet ski situation we created to test the ability of the camera to follow focus, track a very fast-moving object with a constantly changing plane of focus. The F5 can do this at the rate of 8 frames a second, which is unheard of type of speed. That's going to be your arc pretty much. You think that's the kind of height that you'll have right through. I don't need any more. I think I actually might need to back up because you're getting a lot of height there. It also has that speed rate coupled up with a function called dynamic autofocus, in which you can move the focusing sensors right to left and up and down depending on at which point your moving subject enters your frame. So you could be framed vertically, you could be framed horizontally. The camera can accommodate that and track it, and once it picks it up and tracks it, it stays with it. And so in other words, the sensors in the horizontal plane, for instance, if you have a moving subject entering from the right and you activate the right-hand sensor, that sensor then automatically passes off to the other sensors on a horizontal way, and it follows the subject right across the plane. So we set that situation up with the jet ski where we did a jump, and then we did a various high-speed maneuvers through waves and crests of waves with the jet skis flying, and the camera performed wonderfully. tracked up, picked things up, stayed with them. The other thing about the logic of this dynamic autofocus system is that it can sustain an interference and still not be bothered by it. It won't automatically shift over and pick up an object that you don't want to focus on. So we were trying things where there was a fast-moving jet ski that would cut across the plane of the jet ski that we were trying to track, and the camera resisted going with that crossing motion, stayed with the original subject, and continued to track it. That's pretty remarkable. Now let's talk about another autofocus option. In single area AF mode, you select one of the 5 sensors to be the exclusive sensor. Once selected, the focusing system will ignore focus in the other areas, concentrating only on the chosen sensor to determine distance to the subject. This is an ideal autofocus selection for situations where the activity is taking place within the entire scene, but the photographer wants to concentrate on one particular area and do so without the distraction of composing and recomposing. What we set up this morning was basically a scene. And then from that overall scene, what I tried to do was take pieces of it and move closer, work from entire to detail. And it was hard because we were working against the rising morning light, which, as you know, comes up really, really quickly. Okay. Maria, look into the mirror, please. Okay. Now look into the mirror, Maria Claudia. Gotta stay on top of the light reading. We're just picking up. Another focusing option is the use of the electronic rangefinder, which simplifies manual focusing. Arrows in the viewfinder indicate which direction to turn the lens focusing ring. Once focus is achieved, a green dot appears in the viewfinder. Focusing takes place faster and more reliably than by eye alone. One of the F5's most important advances is 3D matrix color metering. You see, using classic metering techniques, a photographer would normally measure scene brightness against a standard of 18% reflectance. Then, based on experience, they would visually evaluate factors like contrast and special conditions such as color and reflectance. For example, a yellow subject should be slightly overexposed to make the subject appear more lifelike. A blue sky should actually be underexposed. Red should also be slightly underexposed. This mental process not only eats up time, but requires extensive practice. It's also based on trial and error. This is why Nikon made sure that the F5's matrix meter senses color information along with scene brightness, contrast, selected focus area, and distance. The same things you consider when you evaluate an exposure. The F5 conducts its advanced scene analysis through a remarkable 1005 pixel RGB red, green, blue on-chip filter. Then, a powerful microcomputer using neurologic software and a database of over 30,000 types of scene data determines the exposure. The analysis is based on actual shooting data and algorithms produced in the field, not the laboratory. The result, the most accurate metering system ever designed. Subjects with low brightness are correctly evaluated. Small objects located at the periphery of the scene are metered with unparalleled accuracy. Off-center, backlit subjects are read more correctly. Scenes with changing compositions are accurately taken into account, and scenes with vividly colored subjects are more precisely evaluated. The 3D color matrix can also detect tungsten and fluorescent lighting conditions and meter them accordingly. Let me show you how to use 3D color matrix metering. What I'm trying to accomplish in shooting this fashion scenario is to demonstrate the RGB response that's built into the camera meter of the F5. It's got a color sensitivity. It can sense color temperature. It can read values that have not been available to your average camera meter before. So it can sense white, it can sense black, it has a logic that'll figure out if a photographer is shooting at a landscape by discerning the color value of, say, blue sky and green in the foreground. Those kinds of things are all built into this meter. So what I'm trying to do is stress that meter a little bit by presenting it with a very difficult situation. We have an intensely white background, and we have 3 fashion models dressed in completely black and white types of gowns, very formal attire. Then over on one side of the camera, we have another fashion model enter from the right-hand side of the frame, wearing flaming red, holding a macaw that's multicolored, feather boa. I mean, you name it, just kind of over-the-top, intense color, but an isolated patch of color in this otherwise monochromatic scene. Very nice, very nice. So we created this very stressful situation for a camera meter. There's extremes of values in terms of color and brightness. And what the meter did was it kind of gobbled it up. It took a look at it, discerned the blacks, the whites, the reds, and it gave me a good exposure. Remember, 3D color matrix metering is performed only with Nikon D-type autofocus lenses. If a non-D-type AF or AIP lens is used, advanced matrix metering is performed. However, distance information is not factored in. You still get all the other amazing benefits of the meter: evaluation of contrast, brightness, selected focus area, and color information. To select 3D color matrix metering, rotate the metering system selector until the matrix metering symbol appears. New 3D color matrix metering is the ideal selection for general shooting. The F5 includes a classic center-weighted meter which concentrates 75% of its sensitivity within a 12mm circle and 25% in the peripheral area. However, with the F5's built-in custom setting number 14, you can also change the size of the metering area to 8mm, 15mm, or 20mm. You can also select a single averaging meter to match the size and distance of the subject. To set flexible center-weighted metering, select the custom setting mode by rotating the main command dial while pressing the CSM button. While keeping the CSM button depressed, rotate the main command dial to select custom function number 14. Rotate the sub-command dial to select 8mm, 12mm, 15mm, 20mm, or average. So the nose goes that way, tail comes this way. As you can see, you've just crash landed your plane into a giant rock. And basically, I've always been, a fan of the technology that's presented in these cameras, and it's usually associated with working with them outdoors or on location. Today we brought them into the studio, and I think the same principles can apply in terms of flexibility in the studio as well as in a controlled environment as well as outdoors. Today what we created here was essentially a very backlit set, and we hot lit the sky, and we had constant light sources going, but there was much more exposure in the rear of the set than there was in the foreground where the model was. So that's a perfect situation for something like the flexible center-weighted metering system that presents itself in the F5. I can be confident that I look through the camera, I see what the meter is telling me to do, and I'm very confident that that is the read that I want. All right, here we go, Dawn. That's nice. So I'm going to center weight, and I'm shrinking the diameter of the sensitivity down to 8mm because this is a pretty backlit scene. I'm going to want my exposure to stay with her, stay on that jacket. Skin tones, the jacket itself is kind of dark. That sky is really poppy and bright, so I want to keep the meter sort of off of that and keep it down towards the model. When you create a lighting scenario like this where there's certain dynamics that are really strongly backlit, this kind of center-weighted metering and the ability to take a lens not physically closer to a person for sensitivity purposes, but at the camera adjust the range of sensitivity. That's what we're working with now, and so far the exposures that have been coming back to me from this are perfect for the foreground. Okay, let's switch out of the 8200. We'll go to the 3. Thank you. Now, what I'm noticing, which is a terrific feature of this center weight, is that now I'm going to a 3, so I'm very tight on her face. So I haven't got all that background kind of hot information. That, you know, the overlit background is not going to read into my exposure computation as much as it did on the 80 to 200. So I can actually expand the area of my sensitivity, because I have been at 8 millimeters. And what I can do now is I can just cycle through, and I'm going to go to about 15, because the situation is I'm actually reading exposure-wise the bulk of the area that I actually have in the frame. So I don't have to compensate for that backlit area as much as I did on the shorter lens. Remember, using Nikon software on your personal computer, you can change the size of the center weighted meter to almost any size you like. Now let's talk about spot metering. When using the standard ECB screen supplied with the F5, each AF focusing area becomes an active spot meter. Within each of these AF areas, the F5 concentrates nearly 100% of its sensitivity, giving you highly selective exposure control. The F5 also allows you to select which spot meter you want to use. Selecting from one of the 5 spot meters means you don't have to keep adjusting and readjusting your composition. You can simply select the spot meter location that's right for your shot. To select spot metering, rotate the metering system selector while pressing the metering system lock release. Rotate the selector until the symbol for spot metering appears in the viewfinder. The spot meter always coincides with the focus area that has been selected. So to choose a spot meter, simply select the focus area. The spot meter will then make the reading. Okay. All right. Now, take those other mirrors and kind of play around. Okay, I definitely need somebody to put additional highlight onto her face. Okay, relax for a second. Take a break, Angeli. Okay, let me go to a longer lens, please. What we did here is we created a scene where there's a lone individual on the beach. And we lit that individual in a very singular way with reflected light from a mirror, creating just bands of very intense light. So that's obviously a difficult situation for any camera to handle. All right, let's just keep it as a backup. With the dynamic autofocus system, I can shift the sensitivity on the focusing system over to where the person is, because that's my critical area. Okay, now, we have a really dramatically lit this way. That's pretty, right there. The spot meter capability of the camera will follow that autofocus sensor. And what I'm doing is I'm composing in different ways and taking pieces of the photograph. The exposures in the foreground and the background are radically different, so it's crucial that you have sensitivity where you need it. And the camera can accommodate that really well. It functions extremely well in that situation. Cue the birds. You can also compensate your exposures with the F5 within a range of plus or minus 5 EV in 1/3 EV increments. And because the exposure compensation symbol and value appear in the viewfinder as well as the top deck LCD panel, you can set the compensation value while keeping your eye on the subject. To set compensation, press the exposure compensation button and rotate the main command dial to select the compensation value you desire. The dial is graduated in 1/3 EV increments. Now let's talk about flash. The F5 offers Nikon's 3D multi-sensor balanced fill flash. The F5's advanced capabilities expand this technology even further. Working with advanced Nikon speedlights, the F5 measures and evaluates ambient light with light from the flash. This creates photographs that appear more natural, almost as if flash hasn't been used at all. The F5 uses a built-in 5-segment TTL flash sensor. The principles of multi-pattern metering have been applied to flash photography. In the fraction of a second after the shutter release is depressed, but before the shutter actually moves, a rapid-fire series of events takes place. Distance information is provided to the F5's computer through the D-type lens. The electronic rangefinder then determines the focus status and compares this to the original information. If the data is much different, the camera knows the subject is off-center. If it is largely unchanged, the camera knows the subject remained at the center. Focus status information is critical because it helps the flash system determine where the subject is located. Depending upon whether the subject is in the center or off-center, segments are then weighted accordingly. The system evaluates the scene through the use of a monitor pre-flash. an imperceptible series of flashes prior to the actual exposure. Reflected light is measured and analyzed for brightness in relation to the subject distance. The F5's computer then decides which segments of the scene should be used for flash control and what amount of flash is necessary to produce the desired effect. The result is a system that accounts for the background and color with a very high degree of accuracy, reads the actual flash exposure, and builds distance and focus considerations into the shot. Franz Lanting takes us on location.
Okay, yeah, we are ready. That was a nice one.
Here you come. You wanted this one from here, so
Yeah, light's getting good now.
here you come. Come, Chewy.
3D color matrix balanced fill flash operates in all exposure modes, so you can put its performance and reliability to maximum advantage. However, it's important to remember that if a non-D-type lens is used, distance information is not factored into the exposure. The Nikon F5 is capable of independent auto exposure and auto flash bracketing. This is a tremendous photographic advantage. Exposure compensation increases or decreases the entire exposure. If you increase the compensation by 1/3 of an EV, the entire photograph is affected. Or, if you decrease the compensation by 1/3, again the whole exposure is affected. However, with the F5, auto exposure bracketing can take place independent of flash bracketing and vice versa. This means that the ambient exposure in a flash photograph, usually the background, can be varied in EVs or EV increments, while the power of the flash exposure, usually the foreground, remains constant. Or you could vary the power of the flash exposure while keeping the ambient exposure constant. Auto exposure bracketing, which will affect the entire exposure, is set by rotating the main command dial while pressing the BKT button. This selects the auto exposure flash bracketing mode. BKT appears in the LCD panels, and this symbol blinks in the viewfinder. Then, while pressing the BKT button, rotate the subcommand dial to select the number of shots you want and the compensation value from the selections shown. For example, 2 shots, one at the metered value and one at +1/3 EV, appear like this. 3 shots, one at the metered value, one -2/3 EV, and one +2/3 EV, appear like this. Remember, to set auto exposure or flash bracketing independent of each other, you must use custom setting number 24. To perform only auto exposure bracketing, select 01E. To perform only auto flash bracketing, select 10E. In addition, custom setting 17 allows you to change the way you bracket in the manual exposure mode. Selection 11A, the default setting, allows you to shift both shutter speed and aperture. Selection 10A allows you to choose the shutter speed bracketing increments while the aperture remains fixed. Great for studio photography. Selection 01A allows you to bracket the aperture according to the shutter speed you have selected. And selection 00A is flash output level, which allows you to keep the ambient light at a consistent level while independently varying the intensity of the flash. If background exposure must remain constant, use manual exposure control and this custom setting. Have her on set by like 4:30?
Perfect.
That'd be all right?
Yep.
When you talk about bracketing, which is the mode that I used in this picture, historically you've always talked about bracketing in the technical sense. You know, you physically move f-stops. The F5 will do that automatically for you. And in the realm that we're talking about now, we're not really talking about right or wrong exposures. We're talking about exposures that are aesthetically pleasing So in effect, there is no right or wrong exposure. It depends on how you want it to look, how you want it to feel. Here I've got a freshly painted backdrop that I've never photographed before, and I don't know how exactly it's going to render on film. So what I've got here is a situation where I can bracket my flash automatically, I can bracket the ambient component of the exposure automatically, and then I can go to all mode bracketing, which will take care of both ends of it for me in third stop increments. That's nice. Good. The F5 also offers FP flash sync with manual exposure control to 1/4000th of a second. And the F5 expands your fill flash capabilities with high-speed flash sync up to 1/300th of a second with automatic TTL control via custom setting number 20. This will be good, yeah, right into the sun is good. I'm going to track you through this lens. I'll see how we do. I'm not, it's not like a super serious shoot right now. This is mostly like a couple of test runs, see what you can do, whatever you're comfortable with. I'd love to see a range of motion and that kind of thing. What we were trying to accomplish with the shot of the wakeboarder was I was being towed behind the boat very close to the wakeboarder as he was doing his stunts. I think you've seen a lot of those kinds of pictures shot in a telephoto way from the moving boat. What I was trying to do is establish a different angle, a wide angle, almost directly underneath him as he flies through the air during his various maneuvers. And what I was trying to do there was fill it with flash and do it at a very high shutter speed so I would stop his motion. The F5 offers you the capability of shooting strobe at a 1/300th of a second, which is very fast and should stop a lot of motion that heretofore has been impossible to stop with strobe sync. All of this amounts to tremendous flash photographs. The Nikon F5 and advanced Nikon speedlights can deliver amazing results. What we're trying to do by flying this camera on the motorized hang glider is seeing how the flash and the camera hook up in an automatic way. The flash is on TTL and is liaisoning with the automatic exposure in the camera and producing a balanced fill flash picture in a situation where obviously I can't physically be there to direct the exposure myself. And the camera performed very, very well in that situation. And then what I'm hoping to show as the night got darker, I asked the pilot to fly over the city lights of Miami, and I had the strobe set to a rear curtain function. So what I'm hoping to show there is that pilot is taking turns and twists over these city lights, and the exposure is automatically lengthening out in the camera to probably as much as 2 to 4 seconds, and the flash is on rear curtain. You'll get some tracer lines of light and some moving dynamic to the city of Miami, and that'll illustrate the component of the camera we call rear curtain, which means the strobe is firing at the end of the exposure and allowing you the capability of showing all these streaks of light and doing a long exposure and punctuating that exposure with the strobe at the end of it. You can see that the F5 opens up a whole new world of photographic opportunity. And perfectly matched to that opportunity are Nikon lenses. Nikon produces the optical glass for its lenses in its own glassworks to legendary standards. Extra low dispersion glass, integrated coatings, close range correction, and internal focusing are only a few of Nikon's lens innovations. But perhaps the greatest innovation of all is the F lens mount itself. Because of its F lens mount, the F5 will accept hundreds of Nikkor lenses. The F5 is compatible with all AF Nikkor lenses, and the camera offers full performance with D-type AF Nikkor lenses. D-type AF Nikkor lenses feature built-in computers that work together with the computer found in the F5. Together they deliver the distance technology that makes the F5 so remarkably accurate and reliable. earlier Nikkor AF lenses will also deliver excellent results, but don't take advantage of the distance technology. Features are limited when using Nikkor AI lenses, so please read the lens compatibility section of your instruction manual before you use these lenses. Nikon's newest lenses feature exclusive silent wave motor technology. These incredibly quiet AFS lenses focus quickly and quietly. Nikon accessories expand your photographic opportunities even further. Nikon's multi-control back MF28 records a copyright symbol, date, and photographer's name between frames, immediate identification of your photographs even during processing. It also allows wider range bracketing up to 9 exposures, freeze focus for macro photography in nature, intervalometer for consistent time-lapse photography, and extended time exposures up to 999 hours. The Modulite remote control set enables wireless remote camera operation from a distance of up to 26 feet. The world's greatest lenses, interchangeable focusing screens and viewfinders, remote cords, power cords, color correcting filters, soft focus filters, black and white filters, lens shades, and an array of speed lights make the F5 the most comprehensive photographic system available. Now that you've learned about the F5's major features, let's look at some photo disciplines, some possible custom settings, and some lenses that we recommend for each category of shooting. For faster film loading, custom setting number 8 should be selected. This automatically loads film when the camera's back door is closed. For sports and action, you might want to choose the continuous high-speed film advance mode of 8 frames per second. Autofocus would be used to take advantage of focus tracking with lock-on. Select custom setting number 4, which allows you to activate AF from the 2 secondary start buttons, separating AF operation from the shutter release. Continuous servo would be selected, and using custom function number 1 changes release priority to focus priority. Using this custom setting, the F5 will shoot only when in-focus images are detected, even at speeds up to 8 frames per second. Preset your focus area selector to where you know the action will begin. Then we're going to engage dynamic autofocus to make sure the action is followed, no matter where the subject moves within the AF sensor framing area. Because the magazine we're shooting for prefers richer, deeper exposures, we'll be setting the F5's exposure compensation to -1/3 EV. Now we have a camera that's ideally suited for sports photography. Now let's look at lenses. Nikon's 80-200mm f2.8D AF Zoom Nikkor offers great versatility for everything from sideline portraits to close-ups of the action itself. With its wide maximum aperture, this lens produces great in-focus subjects with out-of-focus backgrounds in lightning quick response time. This is a lens you will not want to leave behind. The workhorse of sports photography is the 300mm f2.8D AFS Nikkor lens. With a TC20E, you can get an amazing 600 f5.6 with full autofocus and 3D color matrix metering.
Well, what I wanted to accomplish today was, these are U.S. Olympians, and I wanted to show them in a dynamic graphic fashion. These girls embody perfection in motion.
Love that.
And I wanted to show a tie between them and the United States, and the flag is a graphic, bold emblazonment of that.
Excellent.
I used the dynamic autofocus to follow them through the frame. When they left the board, I wanted to be able to track them across the plane of the film, maintain my composition, and concentrate on composition and concentrate on the beauty of the dive, so we could see start to finish how these masters do their dives and capture the flavor of exactly what they were doing on film. Man, I love how that looks. I love how this thing feels too.
Our settings for photojournalism might be similar to sports and action. However, because of the unpredictable nature of these situations, we would switch to 3D color matrix metering to handle changing light situations. Auto exposure bracketing is also a logical choice to ensure we get a shot acceptable to the photo editor. With a speed light, we'd also engage flash bracketing with custom setting number 24. Set the flash sync to stay at 1/250th of a second in program and aperture priority modes with custom setting number 20. If your negatives have to be sleeved for filing purposes, select custom setting number 12, which stops shooting at frame 35. Some selected lenses might include the 18mm f2.8, which allows very close focus, especially where you want the foreground subject to be dominant. The 20 to 35 2.8 offers versatility for anything from portraits to architecture. The 24 to 120 f3.5 to 5.6 is excellent when working in tight areas and yet can provide classic portraits. The 80 to 200 2.8 may be the most important lens for photojournalism. From fires to press conferences, this lens covers them all, and fast. A Nikon 300mm 2.8 can help you catch isolated portraits and lets you cover the action from a distance. The S version of this lens is ideal for indoor shooting where silence is a must. Adding a TC20E teleconverter will extend your reach without significantly increasing your cost. Using an MF28 multi-control back can save you time by imprinting your name and copyright on your images.
That's it. You working hard? Good. What are you doing? Just helping out, right? The bottom line is that, you could have all the desires in the world to do this. And you could have all the lighting situation to do this. And you could have the greatest smile in the world and the greatest sunrise in the world and the greatest anything in the world. But unless you have the tool to capture it, it's only captured in the heart and the eye. And that's not enough. And that's where we go beyond. And that's where you have to write the tool. When I picked this camera up, it was like a whole new connection. Just the way it feels. Before I even saw any of the features, I knew I felt it was like made for me. And I'm out there, and it just, I don't, like I said, I don't think it's it's just an extension. Because now I can look at life and see those slices of life, and whatever I want, I got it.
One feature of the F5 that is ideal for portraiture is variable center-weighted metering. By setting the meter to evaluate the scene at 8mm, you are ensuring tight, predictable readings where the background light is less of an influence. Bracket the shutter speeds in manual mode when using Studio Flash. Do this through custom setting number 17. There's even a custom setting that includes locking the sync speed. Nikon 28PC and 35PC lenses are ideal for correcting perspective in product shots. And the 20-35 2.8 offers versatility for everything from environmental portraits to wide-angle close-ups, an essential lens for group shots. The 35-70 2.8 is highly useful for studio tabletop shots and sets. The 105mm f2 DC allows for selective defocus and placement of focus area. This classic length also makes this lens ideal for portrait photography. The AF Micro Nikon 200mm f4D ED-IF AF is great for classic portraits, but also enables detail shots that can explain an individual's personality. The 300mm 2.8 Nikon offers a very shallow area of focus and a very isolated subject. Extended bracketing is also an asset in portraiture, so the addition of an MF28 is a good idea. With its ability to imprint copyright information in between the picture frame, the MF28 becomes an extremely versatile accessory. You may also find the waist level finder DW30 an important tool as well, depending on your shooting style.
Yeah, start getting her fixed up. Let Todd handle that, okay?
turn your body maybe this way, okay? A little bit more. Okay, that's good. A little more. Let me just try one other thing too.
I always start out there with a kind of a preconceived idea, you know. I know what I want before I start, but 9 chances out of 10 never works out that way. And I'm not as you can probably see even by what we've been doing today, is I don't know what I'm going to do 5 minutes later. And I know other photographers, you know, they really plan these things out, and I've always wanted to be like them, but it doesn't work.
Maybe just looking up, okay? Bobby, just sort of chin up a little bit. That's good, good.
Like I say, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I didn't know I was going to shoot a girl today. And the girl we used is an assistant working for me today. And I just felt that the Indian wasn't right for this particular shot, and I needed somebody like her. And we were actually shooting pretty wide today. I was shooting like both the 24mm and 20mm lenses, trying not to get distortion, and there'll be a little bit, but we're trying not to make it that noticeable in the pictures, because I really want this background. I want these lines and these shadows and the light. As you know, the light doesn't last long here. We probably only have a real 1 hour shooting time. But a lot of times, depending on who I'm shooting or what kind of a picture I'm going after, if it's a celebrity or somebody else, we try to, well, like anybody though, we try to loosen them up. You know, you just want them to loosen, so you're waiting for the right moment. But you might have the right moment, but the light might not go right. You know, so all of a sudden he turns his head another ½ inch this way and the light's right, but the moment's gone. And I think that's one reason too, that we should shoot so much film, because if you turn a 1/4 inch, it's a different picture, another ½ inch this way, and it means a lot in the picture. And some people say, well, you're bound to get something out of 300 frames or 7,000 frames. I know photographers who shoot 10,000 frames and don't get a picture. I mean, you know, it's not the question of shooting the film. It's a question of just having more to select from, because sometimes your pictures get better, you know, just by when a person moves, or you just try to wait for the right time.
Shooting wildlife can be especially challenging. It is here that the new automatic features of the F5 become most important. Dynamic AF, focus tracking, 3D color matrix metering, and 3D multi-sensor balance fill flash work together to capture fleeting subjects. High-speed flash sync with custom setting number 20, flash bracketing, and custom settings for focus and release priority all play an important role depending on the nature of your subject. The MF28 can be an important addition, adding freeze focus and data captioning as an important wildlife tool. The lens selections for wildlife are similar to sports and action. The 24-120, the 75-300 are great for environmental and landscape shooting. Nikon 400, 500, and 600mm lenses let you reach out into the action. Nikon's 400mm f2.8 is an exceptional telephoto lens due to its speed and focal length. With a TC20E attached, the 400 becomes an incredible 800mm lens at a fast f5.6. The new Nikon S lenses are extremely valuable due to their speed and reduced noise. Since many wildlife shots are at dusk and dawn when animals are most active, speed is very important. You might want to add a 105 or 200 AF micro Nikkor to your outfit, allowing close-up shots for extra working room with critters that bite or snap.
This is going to be our working area right here for the seals. There's quite a number of them hauled out there. You see they come right to the edges. We can sneak up to them, say using that as cover. We'll be working this area generally around here. This is the perfect rig for this situation here. Just flexible. And you can't believe how fast that motor drive works here. And you can see those seals, they're just coming up for a few seconds and then they're down again. With this rig I can just get off, say, a whole sequence. We got it set up with auto bracketing, 3 frames, 2/3 of a stop apart. Can just run through one whole sequence before they go under again. And when you're this close to the water surface, if you're autofocusing with only, say, work in the center of the frame, you end up with dead-looking compositions. But by putting the focus on top of the frame or on the bottom of the frame, I can get a much more dynamic composition out of this situation. We've got a shoreline filled with birds here, and there are a number of harbor seals that are holed out and some others that are just submerged. What I intend to do is go upstream a little bit more, and then we'll let the current, the tide's going out at present, it'll take us slowly past the seals, and with our anchor we can stop ourselves in any position.
Commercial shooting with the F5 takes advantage of many of its advanced new features, including dynamic AF, 3D color matrix metering, high-speed sync, flash bracketing, and any number of custom settings depending on the situation. And AF lenses include the 2035-2.8, the 3570-2.8, 8200-2.8, AFS 300, 105 micro, and AFDC 135 f2. There's also teleconverters, TC14E and TC20E. An action finder is great on location, and the extended bracketing of the MF28 is also an important addition. Let's see how Pete Turner handles a commercial shoot.
I think today people are so used to photography, and it seems simple, that they really don't realize that there's a great deal of complexity, usually in commercial photography. And one of the things I always try to stress is that rarely is it a function of a single person. It's usually a function of a team that comes together at a special time and place to produce a certain type of photograph. Commercial work is intense, it's hard, but it's very rewarding because it's directed.
This is Chris. Am I in position? Yes, you are.
I feel it's very important that you have a game plan when you're going out and shooting. If you just wake up in the morning and you say, well, I'm just going to grab a camera and a different lens and go out and maybe something's going to happen, it might, but it's a better plan to have an idea that you want to shoot something specifically.
That was real good.
The vision that I wanted to create is I wanted to go out and shoot action and track with it and get the body language and everything and get synced up with it with the speed of the helicopter, moving at the same speed as the jet ski. The use of a helicopter gave us a great deal of freedom in this particular shoot. I could be any place I wanted to be, and in my mind's eye, of course, you have a certain lighting in mind, you have a certain colors you're looking for and whatnot, and the real fun of things, the things that really start burning along, is things are not always the way you're going to plan them, but they come out even better. I mean, you might waltz around like on 180, all of a sudden you're looking backlit at something, you're picking up speculars off the water. Because you've used your shutter priority and you dialed down low, you're getting really neat blurs, and those are giving you great streaks, and then you can like give your body camera language. And the basic bottom line is you want a camera that you can trust and is dependable and that you can work with on a regular basis.
Another important accessory that can help you with commercial and other types of shooting is Nikon Photo Secretary for the F5. Photo Secretary for the F5 is a computer-linked software package that connects the F5 with your PC or Macintosh computer. A Nikon MC33 cord is used for PC connection, and an MC34 cord for Macintosh computers. Photo Secretary offers expanded photo opportunities through additional custom settings, the remote operation of up to 3 F5s, and the selection, downloading, and editing of shooting data. The PC version is Windows 95 based, and the Macintosh version operates on System 7.1. In addition to the custom settings available through your camera, Photo Secretary adds another 17 options. Included are slowest sync speed selection from 1/60th to 30 seconds, shutter release time lag up to 1 second, and focus lock in AFS mode. When operating multiple F5s, choose simultaneous in-sequence time lag or individual shutter release options before the cameras are set up from the convenience of your computer keyboard. Photo Secretary allows you to select and download shooting data from your camera. 2 types of shooting data are available: frame data and film data. Frame data is information about each frame, and film data is about each roll of film. Here's how easy it is to store either type of data. Connect your camera body to your computer using the MC33 cable. Turn the camera power on. Select Camera Operation, and then click on Tool and Custom Functions. A dialog box will appear. Then simply select the shooting data you wish to store. Now only data that you've selected will be stored in the camera. As a note, you cannot store data for year, month, day, hour, minute, second, or data containing characters unless the MF28 is attached to the camera. Once you've selected the shooting data you want to collect, downloading it from your camera takes only a few mouse clicks. With your camera and computer connected and the camera power on, click Tool, Shooting Data, and then Load All in the dialog box. Scanned images can then be linked to shooting data by opening the file and selecting the frame to which you want to link an image. Then simply download the image directly from a scanner or storage device. Nikon wants to support your photographic efforts in every way we can. Nikon School video learning tapes are available for every Nikon SLR camera, including key accessories like advanced speed lights. Nikon Master Series tapes cover both the fundamentals and the insights of the world's greatest photographers. Nikon World Portfolio takes you into the hearts and minds of today's and tomorrow's photographic greats. For information on Nikon School videotapes or to subscribe to Nikon World Portfolio, call toll-free 1-800-55-NIKON. On behalf of Nikon, I hope you've enjoyed this special presentation on the F5. Whether you're a photojournalist, sports photographer, wildlife photographer, or just a photo enthusiast, the F5 can help you take the world's greatest pictures. Yours. The Nikon F5, imported from the future. For Nikon, I'm Joe McNally. Thanks for joining us.